So, have you ever wondered why your favourite piddle weak beer brand has decided to tell you that you should be trans? I'm, of course, referring to Bud Light sponsoring trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney, because that went really well for them, didn't it? Well, Donald Trump Jr. has come out and said we should probably back off Anheuser-Busch boycotts. I say we, I mean the Patriots over in the Americans. You're doing really good, lads. I don't drink that rubbish. But because they give lots of money to Republicans. So one might suggest that the Trump campaign might be willing to make strange compromises, as he has by inviting Caitlyn Jenner to Mar-a-Lago last week. But also, there is something interesting here, which is there's a disjunction between Anheuser-Busch's political donations and their corporate activism. Now, you already covered with Callum that there is a marketing executive who has decided to market Bud Light to younger age demographics, ones that cannot drink in America because you have to be above the age of 21, or just in college and sneaky, apparently. And also, Dylan Mulvaney's large cohort of young trans... I don't know what I can say on YouTube. Trans enthusiasts, people who think they're in the wrong gender, who are about 15 and largely girls that say, I wish I was this skinny, because they have body disillusion problems. But
deeply confused then.
Yeah, it's quite tragic, actually. So how do you balance those two? Was she just a rogue marketing executive that has gone on a campaign to destroy the country at the expense of Anheuser-Busch, which are actually patriotic Republicans? Or are they playing both sides because there are financial incentives weighed towards the trans activism? And I think that's the case.
Okay.
Lots of people have been talking about this new thing called the Corporate Equality Index, and today we're going to explore that as part of the ESG umbrella. So if you want to learn more about ESGs, you can go and subscribe to the website for as little as £5 a month. Speaking of monetary confiscation, we have been demonetized, so all of your money helps us keep the lights on, and we've got exclusive content like this where I, nearly a year ago now, before I even joined the company, decided to do a deep dive into ESG infrastructure, its digital enforcement mechanisms, its aims, and exactly who is behind it. And I compared it to the biblical mark of the beast. There's an audio track there. You can get a condensed rundown, but some points from it. So ESG isn't like impact investing, because ESG actually builds a broad portfolio. Am I correct in thinking that? Because impact investing, you could do select different things.
Yeah,
ESG has an ideological bent.
Another very quick plug. I did do a Broconomics on BlackRock, which
that'll be coming later.
Which will be the formation, of ESG. And so, it essentially started out as the G bit, the governance bit.
Yes.
And then just we would just stick the this environmental and social in there as well.
Yeah, expanded into woke activism and environmental climate catastrophizing as prerequisites for your company to sign on for, so that you get corporate subsidies. I've summarized it as essentially an insurance mechanism against get woke, go broke, and a mechanism for total market capture by supranational bodies like the World Economic Forum and their hedge fund partners like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So that seems to be about what's happening. Interesting thing is, though, as there have been legislative attacks and fiscal tightening, there's been some money flowing away from ESG recently. If we go to the Zero Hedge article, so according to the iShares ESG Aware MSCI USA ETF, ESG looks to be the first thing on the chopping block for the banking sector as they look to cut costs ahead of the cheap money bubble bursting. If you scroll down, John, there's going to be some graphs in here for our our video listeners to watchers to look at. Audio listeners, it just shows ESG dropping off the map. Bloomberg ETF expert Eric Balkhaus has noted that the sector and its well-known ETF are experiencing significant outflows. Balkhaus wrote last week on Friday that the ESGU ETF saw a record-smashing $4 billion in outflows, followed by another $1 billion on Monday. Now, this was back in the last week of March. So it turns out that corporate activism isn't necessarily fiscally responsible. It doesn't mean that they're not still committed to the ideal of market capture, and some of them aren't still true believers in the woke cause. It just means as the winds change in terms of how much money can go in and out, they might be tempted to cut this.
That's one of the points I made on ESG. I think it is downstream of the real problem, because a lot of the reason why these firms like BlackRock and all the other ones have adopted ESG is because they're essentially institutional pension fund managers, and when people come to them like the Canadian Teachers Pension Fund, they say, "Oh, have you got good ESG policies?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, we do that." But when people start saying, "Oh, you don't do that ESG bollocks, do you? Otherwise, we're taking our money out," that trend will reverse quite quickly. And obviously, your chart there shows that it does.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because, well, we sort of think of ESG as a monolith, but I think I'm right in saying that the hedge funds are also competitors to a large degree. And so...
Yeah, they take pension fund money as well, which is like the big thing BlackRock are going after.
Yeah, so if BlackRock have been the spearhead on formulating the ESG framework, what happens when ESG becomes an unpopular marketing mechanism for market capture, and some of the woke capital ideals that they're all trying to buy into? Don't they want to be top of the pile if it seems that BlackRock has got a bad reputation? If we go over to the next one, it turns out that Vanguard are pulling out of one of the ESG criteria here. It's quite interesting.
Okay.
So
Well, as in,
they're
what,
rolling back the
presumably
climate investments.
Okay, so they're dropping the E.
Yes. So, in December, Vanguard resigned from the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, a coalition of 301 asset managers committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We felt our voice was being drowned out or confused, said Tim Buckley in an interview with the Financial Times. So they still want to be dominant. It's not that they don't necessarily believe in it, it's they don't want the mechanisms that are currently in place to not be spearheaded by Vanguard. So they're dividing and conquering themselves here. So it might be an opportunity for us to pry it apart. So this is secret white pill in here, ladies and gentlemen. Buckley added that Vanguard's approach to managing climate change risks, which is focused primarily on company disclosure standards, has not changed. The Vanguard boss also warned investors to not expect superior returns from ploughing money into ESG funds and alternative assets, two of the fastest growing parts of asset management, rather than the index trackers championed by his firm. We cannot state that environmental, social and governance investing is better performance-wise than broad index-based investing. Our research suggests that ESG investing does not have any advantage over broader based investing. So they still believe in the belief. So they're still our enemies, but the way that BlackRock has marketed it has made it very easy for Republican legislatures and people like us to critique it in the media and try and get rid of it. So Vanguard are now divesting away from BlackRock's specific marketed version and thinking, how do we capture the market instead? Which means that there's slightly less power in that pot.
I mean, they're basically as big as BlackRock. I mean, they're the two big animals.
Yeah, but it's better to keep them divided than together.
Yes.
That's actually a good thing, yeah. Well, actually, it says here as well, Vanguard sells just 28 sustainable funds with global assets of $33.9 billion. That's behind its closest rival, BlackRock, which has a far bigger range of 282 sustainable funds and assets of $270 billion, according to Morningstar. So BlackRock are still well out ahead, but they're taking most of the PR backlash at the moment. So Vanguard are trying to break away somewhat, but it's better they don't pool all their resources against us at once, because it means we have maybe a fighting chance. If you do want to learn more about BlackRock, as you've already plugged, we have your Brokenomics that's just come out. We've got a new one coming out today, so for anyone on the website who wants to keep up with the series, new episodes out every Tuesday at 3 o'clock UK time. But over to the next. One of the things that you mentioned actually in here was Larry Fink's sense of purpose address to CEOs. And I wanted to read this out, because for those who aren't too familiar on ESG still, this is the moral market capture that Fink has spearheaded in partnership with the World Economic Forum and a bunch of hedge funds. And this elucidates exactly where their mindset is at. We see many governments failing to prepare for the future on issues ranging from retirement and infrastructure to automation and worker retraining. As a result, society increasingly is turning to the private sector and asking that companies respond to broader societal challenges. Indeed, the public expectations of your company have never been greater. Society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. Now, that reads like someone who has genuinely drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yes.
It really does. So these people, it's not just a cynical ploy. Yeah, it keeps them in power, but also some of them are true believers. They think of themselves as high priests of this new religion, which is why they're going to remain committed to this. So I don't want to just discount Callum's reading of the situation of the Bud Light, which is that they've got millennial corporate activists who have come in and are enforcing their agenda and committing corporate suicide. Unfortunately, this isn't committing corporate suicide because the hedge funds are subsidizing this no matter how unprofitable it is, because the hedge funds have also bought into the ideology. So it's to insulate the economic loop. The only thing that can actually get us out of this mess is if the hedge funds start infighting, which it seems that Vanguard and BlackRock have maybe started to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think these sort of people, it is money first and ideology second. So I suspect a big part of why they're adopting it is because they feel that they need to get the inflows so that they can get the Canadian teachers pension fund and all the rest of it. But yeah, again, this is just so permeated society at this point. It's just the set of assumptions that the people who are now halfway up these organisations genuinely believe in.
Well, if the financial infrastructure starts to break down because they fight between themselves,
yes,
that leaves a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. So we might be able to fill it.
Yes, the second best outcome for base people is the elites fighting each other rather than us.
Exactly. Yes. So keep your chin up. So what exactly have Anheuser-Busch bought into? Why have they bought into the ESG index? Why have they got Dylan Mulvaney on board? What form of Larry Fink's activism do they believe in? Well, let's go over to the New York Post article that set everyone aflame, including the likes of James Lindsay, Tim Pool, and Vivek Ramaswamy, who've been talking about this all week. This is the Corporate Equality Index. And this is set up by the Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest LGBTQ plus political lobbying group in the world. They've received millions of dollars from George Soros' Open Society Foundation, and they issue report cards for America's biggest corporations via the CEI, awarding or subtracting points for how well companies adhere to what the HRC calls its rating criteria. Businesses that attain the maximum 100 points earn the coveted title Best Place to Work for LGBTQ Equality. 15 of the top 20 Fortune 500 companies received 100% ratings last year. More than 840 UF companies have racked up high CEI scores, and the HRC, which was formed in 1980 and started the CEI in 2002, is led by Kelly Robinson, who was named as president in 2022 and worked as a political organizer for Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. So deep state operatives, as per usual. Yeah. Some American CEOs are more concerned about pleasing BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street Bank, who are among the most top shareholders and most American publicly traded corporations, including Nike, Anheuser-Busch and Kate Spade, than they are about irritating conservatives, numerous sources told The Post.
Well, yeah, because those groups that you just mentioned, they could easily have 15% of your share base.
Yeah.
And not only that, they would be the 15% of shares that are most likely to vote, because most shares don't vote. So if you're the CEO and the vote coming up at the next board meeting is, can I keep my job for another year, please?
Yes.
Absolutely, you do what these guys say.
Yeah, and so you have to genuflect to the woke corporate activist lobbying body who have previously and are currently in bed with the government.
Mechanism. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it is pairing subsidies and positions of corporate governance with woke activism. It's total market capture. This is what we're fighting against. Yeah. So if we go on to the Human Rights Campaign, we'll see who they are. Their partners include, and some of these names now may not shock you as to what the corporations have been doing regarding deplatforming and outspoken activism in the last couple of years. Airbnb, explains Lauren Southern, AT&T, Bank of America, Cisco Systems, Coca-Cola, Electronic Arts, Everytown for Gun Safety, Gilead Sciences, Google, Home Depot, IKEA, JP Morgan Chase, Levi Strauss, Lyft, Match, National Education Association, explains drag queen Osorio in schools, Open Society Foundation, because of course George Soros is in this, the PepsiCo Foundation, Pfizer, Pharma, Rockefeller Foundation, State Farm, T-Mobile, Toyota, Twitter, United Airlines, UPS, US Bank, Vanguard, Verizon, Walt Disney, Warner Media, Wells Fargo, and I cut names out of that.
Yeah.
I just chose some of the most prominent ones that you and I might know. There are tons of people bankrolling this activist effort.
Well, and the amount of woke nonsense included on that. I mean, you mentioned Coca-Cola. I mean, of course, they came out with the Be Less White line. And, you know, I've got to say, as conservatives, we have got to get better at boycotting these brands that do not represent our values. So let that be a lesson to you.
You're cucked, Dan, for drinking that poison. For anyone who was listening on audio, he's shaking a Coke Zero can. So enjoy your aspartame poisoning, I suppose. From the latest report in 2020, the program grew by 103%, rating a total of 63 companies with 20 top earning marks. 624 CEI-rated companies have adopted gender transition guidelines for employees, just to let you know exactly what the aims of this program are. And 99% of all CEI-rated companies include gender identity protections, and 89% offer transgender healthcare coverage. So they're paying for mastectomies, castrative surgeries, and gender hormones.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah. That's exactly what you giving your money to these companies does. It cuts people's nuts off. Lovely. All right. So what are the actual criteria of the Equality Index? This will be interesting. Workforce protections earns you 5 points. That's policies that include sexual orientation and gender identity or expression at all operations. So the starting point, the lowest number of points, is the total ubiquity of LGBT ideology across all operations. Not asking much, are they? Number 2, inclusive benefits. To secure full credits, 50 points, each benefit must be available to all benefits-eligible US employees. This is equivalency in same and different sex spousal medical and soft benefits. That's no bonus awarded. That's just the starting. So you don't get any points for doing that, but you have to do that to get the rest of them. Equivalency in same and different sex domestic partner medical and soft benefits. Equivalency in spousal and domestic partner family formation benefits regardless of sex. Equal health coverage for transgender individuals without exclusion for medically necessary care. So anything cosmetic that we define as medically necessary, you can get the company to pay for.
Presumably that's where the bit that you've just had cut now gets infected all the time.
Yeah, so dilation is covered by Coca-Cola. Great. And the LGBTQ plus benefits guide, 5 points. So that's pretty much everything.
Did you say Vanguard have adopted this already?
Yes. They're a leading partner that funds this.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get to all of the places that fund it in a moment. I didn't even list all of them. That was just their premier partners.
Right.
Yeah, not great. Supporting an inclusive culture at work. 4 LGBTQ plus internal training and accountability efforts must be met. So this is 5 points. New hire training clearly states the non-discrimination policy includes gender identity and sexual orientation and provides definitions or scenarios illustrating the policy for each. Supervisors undergo training that includes this. Integration of gender identity and sexual orientation in professional development, skills-based or other leadership training. Right. And integration of intersectionality in professional development, skill-based or other training.
So basically explaining to the new guy that you can't make fun of the chap in the dress.
Yes.
But the thing is that's how society... What we need to get back to is a culture of bullying, because that will cleanse our society. If you can make fun of blokes in dresses, then it will all sort itself out.
But you can't, because one of the criteria on here, and this is for the 5 points part, this is the last one that I didn't read out, is senior management executive performance measures, including LGBTQ diversity metrics. So appoint gay board members, otherwise no points for you.
You know that Canadian teacher who turned up to school in a massive pair of tits?
Kayla Lemieux, yeah, that turns out it's fake.
Loads of executives are going to have to start doing that now.
Yeah.
This is so tragically funny.
I know, it's not great that every company's on board with this. 1 LGBTQ plus data collection effort gets you 5 points. Anonymous employee engagement or climate surveys conducted or on an annual or biannual basis allows employees the option to identify as LGBTQ plus at work. Transgender inclusion best practices gets you 5 points. So that is gender transition guidelines with supportive restroom, dress code and documentation guidance, and implementation of at least one of the following policies or practices. Trans-inclusive restroom facilities, gender-neutral dress code, or policies and procedures that allow for optional sharing of gender pronouns. That is why everyone has it in their bio on LinkedIn. Because they're at a company that gets subsidised to do it.
I don't think I'd want to do any of this.
No, me neither.
What about if I had a ladyboy on my screensaver? Would that get me any points?
Can we say that on YouTube?
I guess so. I don't know. I just did. But...
We are proud supporters of the nation of Thailand, I suppose. Send your unsolicited pictures to Dan. Employee group or diversity council gets you 10 points. Corporate social responsibility gets you 20 points, and that includes 5 distinct efforts of outreach or engagement to broader LGBT community representatives. And that means LGBTQ plus employee recruitment efforts with demonstrated reach of LGBTQ plus applicants. So explicitly only hiring the gays. Again.
So again, we're making it very clear to basically white men at this point, if you want to have a job in corporate America...
Need not apply.
You better put a dress on.
Yeah. So it's not only total market capture of the consumer, so you've got nowhere else to buy from, but it's total corporate capture because it filters down through the ranks. They're pre-selected ideological acolytes in positions of power that already agree with the regime. So it is capture begetting capture.
Because it was already the case 20 years ago that if you were a white man in corporate America... You could only go up the organisation so far unless you were extraordinarily talented before your career would just get capped out because they say, sorry, we've got diversity targets to hit. Where I suppose at least now, you can put a dress on. I mean, is that so bad for a 9 to 5?
They're saying it in front of cameras, I suppose. At least they're being brazen about it rather than doing it behind closed doors. Great. Cope is flowing today. Also, you're not allowed to buy from white men. Supplier diversity program with demonstrated effort to include certified LGBTQ plus suppliers. So it's just mercantilism. They're buying from each other. So it's gays buying from gays. Great. Marketing or advertising to LGBTQ plus consumers. That is where the Dylan Mulvaney thing comes in. You have to include in all of your advertising gay representation. That is why every advert lined up together on mainstream telly has a mixed race family or a gay couple because each of the companies is signed onto it. And so as an aggregate, they're all doing it individually. When you put all the adverts back to back to back, you're thinking, hang on, this isn't the world on my doorstep.
I've never seen an advert. I mean, I don't watch TV anymore, but whenever I've caught glimpse, adverts always now it's a black man and a white woman all the time.
Or a gay couple in it.
Yeah.
There's lots of that.
Okay, what about if I wanted to join corporate America, if I identified as a trans lesbian, identified as a man, so I could still be trans but come to work in a suit. Would that work? Would I get a point?
It depends on if they're implementing the gender-neutral dress code that makes you dress like a Maoist.
Yeah. I'm just thinking maybe there's a way to work through this and still have a job.
But we won't have one after AI anyway. Then you'd have to do the indignity of calling yourself a woman at work.
Yeah.
So you're not coming out of it with your backside intact, let's put it that way. Or the philanthropic support of at least one LGBTQ plus organisation or event. This now explains why Vanguard were running Drag Queen Story Hour in American parks and why Wix supported Brighton Pride last year. Wix, the building merchant, supported Brighton Pride. This is why. Yeah.
Right.
The last one, responsible citizenship. Employers will have 25 points deducted from their score for a large-scale official or public anti-LGBTQ blemish on their recent records. So if one of your employees makes a tweet that goes viral, if you don't include LGBT representation in your advertising, if you don't support Pride, you'll have points automatically deducted. It's an extortion racket. That's all that is. It's saying, we will break your windows if you don't pay us protection money.
Yeah, I mean, since I joined the Lotus Eaters, I've started getting into the Horus Heresy and all this Warhammer stuff. Because, I mean, those of you who've never been to the Lotus Eaters studio, we're all cramped into one corner, and then the rest of the building is just Space Marines everywhere. But anyway, so I've started reading the Horus Heresy, and one of the sort of key themes of that is how this sort of primordial chaos is just corrupting everything subtly from the bottom and just worming its way in and just dragging the society apart. It sort of feels like that this is doing exactly the same thing, except with, candles up the bum and whatever else. Yeah,
Carl and I did describe Simone de Beauvoir's feminism, which has become ubiquitous in all of culture now, as the devouring, chaotic dragon of feminine sexuality, sending forth waves of her subordinates to drown the world. And she actually basically described herself as that. So I think it's an apt thing to say that they want to drag us all back to the chaos before creation, to remake the world in their image. Not wonderful. Okay, so where are the best places to buy from, according to this? So there are 842 companies listed. 379 Fortune 500 employers actively participate in the 2022 CEI. 152 American Law Magazine 200 law firms participated in the 2021 CEI. So even if you go to court and you need representation, they won't represent you because you're not pro-gay. 662 major businesses have adopted gender transition guidelines to establish best practices in transgender inclusion for managers and teams. Right? So, great. Fantastic. If we take a scroll, we'll just see names like, and I'm not going to read them all out because John can just keep going. Abercrombie & Fitch, Adobe, Airbnb, Amazon, AMC, Apple, AstraZeneca, Bank of America, Barclays, Barnes & Noble, Ben & Jerry's, BlackRock, Bloomberg, Coca-Cola, Comcast, Deutsche Bank, Dropbox, eBay, Google, Hershey, IBM, IKEA, Indeed, Infosys, which is Rishi Sunak's father-in-law's company, Intel, JP Morgan, LinkedIn, MasterCard, Match, Microsoft, Nationwide, NCR, Nestle, which explains the weird chicken feed, Nvidia, PepsiCo, Pfizer, Pinterest, which explains banning pro-life content years ago, Ralph Lauren, Riot Games, Samsung, Shell, Sony, Starbucks, State Street, Thomson Reuters, Unilever, Victoria's Secret, explains the trans models, Walgreens, Walmart, Walt Disney, Warner Music, Wells Fargo, Wendy's. That is not even close to listing all of the companies on there.
I mean, I'm just looking at this list. That's basically the FTSE 100, the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq.
It's all of them.
Yeah.
Every single one. And most importantly, Anheuser-Busch. I feel like Gary Oldman in Leon. Everyone! Yeah. They're all in on it. Every single one
because,
of them.
I mean, this was very strongly pictured as just one marketing executive who gone rogue. I think you're making quite a convincing case. It's a little bit of a bigger problem with that.
Yeah, it's not just one woman who's saying it in a Zoom call. She feels emboldened because her job exists, because it's subsidised by every hedge fund, NGO and company in the world.
Well, in America, anyway.
Yeah, so this is why we do a little bit more digging than just looking at our Twitter clips, ladies and gentlemen, because we have to know the scale of the problem that we are fighting against. And they're also not the only racket in town. I am delighted to inform you that the UK has its own homegrown extortion racket, also factoring into ESG, coming from Stonewall. This is the UK Workplace Equality Index. Let's look at their top 100 employees. Let's go over to the next one. The NHS, just the NHS. Great. Wix, explains Brighton Pride, HSBC, Tesco, Unilever, so they're on both. There's some crossover between these indexes as well. Kent Fire and Rescue Service, they're not going to save you from a house fire if you don't shout trans rights. Yep. Sky UK, University of Greenwich, they're not the only university on here, but they are one of the worst ones. Bank of America, University of Manchester, Santander UK, Rolls-Royce, Cardiff Council. There are government bodies on this.
Oxfordshire Council as well.
Yep. So ones that want to do the 15-minute cities.
Yeah. And while they're trying to stop Jamie Clarkson from getting a farm track and a restaurant.
Spot on. Barclays, Credit Suisse, the Environment Agency, the UK government, right? The Scottish government. They just say that.
Oh, obviously.
Explains a lot. Leicestershire Police, the police. Yeah. Leicestershire City Council, Vodafone, Virgin Media, L'Oreal, M&S Bank, NHS England, the King's Fund. So the monarchy, Nationwide Building Society, Deutsche Bank, Mind, Royal College of Psychiatrists, Amazon, Hargreaves Lansdown, and Network Rail. Even the trains are gay.
It's just so damn cheap. Because I'm looking at this list of business. I use a lot of these businesses.
Yeah, you can't not.
Could I just maybe, I agree to watch 10 minutes of hardcore gay porn at the start of every month, and then have businesses that are just normal for the rest of the month? Would that be a fair trade-off? Because they are desperate to push this down our throats one way or another.
You are the master of Hobson's choices, Dan. I really have to give it to you.
I would rather that, just get it over and done with.
Like Clockwork Orange style?
Yeah.
No.
And then get on with your month. But
instead,
we've got to have it dripped into us all month long.
You have to actively pay through taxes and your purchases for your own subversion. There is no way of getting out of it.
Right.
So how do we fight this? Well, if we go to the next one, you covered this, obviously. It was not just one rogue agent, but obviously there are people like this in every corporation, NGO, and government around the world now seemingly trying to implode their companies. Well, instead, if they're all just working hand in hand and subsidizing each other, it's us that's getting screwed. So if we go over to the Anheuser-Busch boycott, which I mentioned at the start, they've had, this is according to the Express here, they're down 4.7% and have lost around 4.56 billion since March 31st in their stocks. So people have been saying that boycotts work. Sure, of course they do, in this specific scenario, where it's just beer. But if it's the NHS, the government, the police, Unilever, which own pretty much everything, it's going to be very, very difficult. So all we can do is twofold, right? Rather than just focusing your efforts on boycotts, focus it on make sure your politicians aren't taking any money from any of these companies, like the Republicans currently are. Don't let Don Jr. off the hook for this. I like the Trump family. I like Don Jr. He's hilarious. But stumping for this corporate activism is what's undoing the entirety of our civilization, so let's not be beholden to donors. Make sure your politicians are aware of this, and all we can do is, one, legislate against it, as hopefully some of the Republicans are doing in America, because we're basically reliant on the Americans at this point, because we don't have any conservatives here. And also, I would advise that we allow the elites to keep infighting among themselves, because at least if Vanguard are at the throat of BlackRock because they want to become the big dog in town, that might give us some breathing room before we are so corporately captured that our own backsides are being sold.
Thanks for watching that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. I hope you enjoyed it. If you fancy exploring more of what we do, you can find our website, lotuseaters.com, and subscribe for as little as £5 per month to access all of the premium work that we do, including a recent chat that Connor and Carl had asking the question of whether Jesus Christ really was a socialist. Short answer, no, but if you'd like more, you can find it on the website. And if you'd like to find more from Connor, you can follow him on Getter at con_Tomlinson. Thank you and goodbye.